Damien piped up, asking what this meant. Astor politely thanked Alfredo for considering him, but explained he preferred things as they were now. He genuinely meant it. Alfredo thought it over. He was born a vagrant in the gray zone, with nothing, and learned magic through natural talent. That's probably why he's so full of himself. He paused, reflecting. I was also born into an ordinary family and ran wild without knowing my limits. The world is vast. I know, it's not small. Alfredo grinned. Right now I feel like I could probably do anything, conquer it all. Not really, Astor said casually. Alfredo's grin faltered, but he told himself to endure. Have you heard the saying about a goblin in the canyon? That's exactly where you were raised, just a canyon, unaware of the dangers. I think I'm more like a wyvern, Astor replied, smirking. And yes, I'm talking about my freedom. Alfredo snapped. I don't know. Therefore, I will personally show you, as a butler, how vast and terrifying this world truly is. Without another word, they headed to the butler's chambers. Alfredo burst through the door with Astor right behind him, ready for whatever lesson the world or Alfredo was about to throw at him. All the other butlers turned, surprised, and greeted him. They were all around his age, but officially recognized as talents of the house, and Alfredo was sure Astor could sense it. Astor studied them and said, they're no joke. Hard to believe they're still in their teens the way they're trained. Their aura, subtle, but it fills the whole space. Though, looking at their eyes, well, goblins after all. He chuckled slightly. Yeah, I do feel something. Alfredo then asked if he would accept his proposal. If you succeed, he said, you'll shine just like these kids. No, brighter than anyone. Astor raised an eyebrow. I actually hate the light. Alfredo blinked. Why? One of the boys raised his hand, calling out to Alfredo. His name was Winster. Alfredo asked what he wanted. Winster said if Astor really felt something, he wouldn't have turned down the offer. Seeing him refuse, he guessed he simply hadn't yet experienced it. He asked if he could offer him some experience. Alfredo tilted his head. A duel? Winster shook his head. Not exactly, just a little taste of what magic is. Alfredo chuckled. A big cocky, but not a bad idea. What about you, Astor? Want to have a duel with a young man? Astor smirked. I know just how thorny he is. They all think I'm a lucky vagrant bastard who rolled in from nowhere. He paused. Can I choose my opponents? Go ahead, Alfredo said. Astor pointed at Winster, then at several others behind him. I'll take on 5 at once. Winster's jaw dropped. Astor grinned. Scared? Bring it on already. Alfredo's eyes widened. Then he started chuckling before erupting into full-blown laughter. Now this is the spirit a successor should have. He leaned forward. Do I have your word for those words? They might be taken as an insult to our house. I'll take responsibility, Astor said casually. Alfredo nodded. Good. If you last 1 minute, I'll give you a gift. If not, well, you'll be held responsible. Astor raised an eyebrow. Sounds like I'll have to succeed you as a butler. Trying to rope me in, huh? Perhaps, Alfredo said with a sly smile. Astor just shrugged. They headed to the training grounds. One of the instructors asked Alfredo if this wasn't dangerous. Alfredo replied, that's why it's valuable. His stubbornness needs to be broken at some point. The instructor grimaced. No good. If he injures the young master's guest, my instructor career is over. He glanced at Damien, who looked nervous. Your friend is in real danger. Stop him. Damien pouted. I'm shocked too. The instructor sighed. I forgot how stupid this kid is. Lance stepped forward, telling Damien to stay out of it. Damien glapped evilly. Alfredo told the instructor to start the match. Understood, he said, sighing. Orders are orders. I'll do my best. Lance lectured Damien one last time, then turned away. I'll be back. Stay out of it. Damien grinned mischievously. The instructor explained the rules, but Alfredo said, make it a free throw. Whatever, he muttered. New rules. It continues until one side surrenders. I may stop at any time, though. Keep that in mind. Winster scowled. Alfredo may pity him, but he shouldn't think he owns the world. I'll crush him and show his true worth. The instructor, slightly regretful, swung his hand, signaling the start. Winster immediately got hit in the stomach, losing his breath. As he tried to recover, he noticed his friends behind him collapsing, clutching their stomachs. Astor stepped forward. Looks like it's best I get in the experience myself. Never underestimate the little guy. Winster stared. He's using magic bullets, basic control, but the cost is ridiculously high. Useless in combat, and he's actually using it. Asper fired magic bullets one by one, hitting all the kids. Second lesson, he said, you can't judge others so easily. Then came the third. The world is vast and bitter. As he closed the gap, Aster hit Winster straight in the face, sending him flying. From now on, I'm going to inject all of these experiences into you. You need to learn well. Winster, clutching his stomach, called him a lunatic. This isn't magic. It is. I'm imbuing myself with it. Physical magic. The instructor and the other butlers stared in shock as Aster effortlessly tore through them all. Alfredo muttered, crazy. To think it's a magic bullet. How many times was it compressed? 4 or 5 at least. If that had hit properly back then, he wouldn't be here today. Truly innate mono control. And on top of that, how the hell is he so good at beating people up? And Damien's over there healing them. Suddenly, Bianca's voice rang out. Alfredo spun in panic. She's here?
The instructor noticed her too, realizing Lance had pulled her in to save them. She nodded subtly and asked what had happened. Alfredo hesitated. Just a simple test. Bianca raised an eyebrow. A test? This? Really? She then scolded Damien, saying he needed to gather the trainees and withdraw them. Alfredo agreed. Bianca told Damien to return to his room as well, then called out to the instructor, "Run fit." "I did my best," he said. She fired him on the spot. Poor bro deserved this? Later that night, Bianca confronted Alfredo. "I know your intentions, but you went too far." Alfredo bowed slightly. "I lost my temper. I accept my punishment." Bianca set her tea down. "I heard you sparred. What exactly happened? Did Damien help?" "No," Alfredo said. "It's more than that. He was incredibly good at hating people. I'm proud." He paused. "And about the magic bullet I mentioned, he used it in the sparring today, compressing it at least 4 or 5 times to increase the power." Bianca's eyes widened. "Excellent mana control. I didn't see it firsthand, but it must have been a spectacle. He defeated 5 trainees alone with just magic bullets. Even high-level mages struggle to handle pure mana." Alfredo nodded. Regarding the successor proposal, he rejected it instantly. She picked up her teacup. "I see. I need to reassess Aster and come up with a better evaluation of him. Bring him here." A little later, Aster entered. Bianca gestured for him to have a seat, while Damien munched on snacks nearby. "I heard you called for me," Aster said. "I did," she replied. Before he could sit, she slid something forward. "What's this?" Aster asked. "It's the gift Alfredo promised," she said. Aster frowned. "I remember that, but I didn't expect it to be prepared by you." "Open it," she instructed. When he did, a bright golden light spilled out. Aster blinked in surprise. "It's a high-grade item. Only recruits in the top 5 mage divisions of Blander can receive this." Aster hesitated. "Usually good intentions stop at a meal. Gifts usually mean a hidden agenda, even if it's a wager reward. A mid-grade gift is understandable, but a high-grade one, too much." Bianca noticed his hesitation. "Eat it without worry. You helped Damien in the gray zone, and this also includes our apology for today." "Do I have to join Blander if I accept?" "No." "Any poison?" "No." "Truly, no conditions?" "None. It's a gift." "Thanks," Aster said. "It's nothing. Though Damien needs to stop eating sweets, he's going to get diabetes." Aster smirked. "Unexpectedly nice game." "Besides that," Bianca said, "I have something I'd like to propose." Aster's eyes narrowed. "Knew it." She patted Damien's head. "I'll arrange an academy admission for him, wanting him to go with Damien. Originally, Damien was supposed to enroll last year, but he opposed it, so it was postponed to this year. I didn't expect him to run away like this, which is why I'm asking. Damien likes him." "If my friend goes, I'm fine with it," Damien said. Aster nodded. "Makes sense." For Bianca, this was a big deal. She worried that if she forced it, he'd run away again, and there was no obvious way to change his mind. Still, this wasn't a bad opportunity for him either. The academy was a good opportunity. In a world driven by blood ties and connections, an academic tie could open many doors. Aster acknowledged that. It was great. But he couldn't shake the feeling that it was like putting a leash on him. "I'll think about it," he said. "Let me know once you decide," she replied. Then, as if on a whim, she added, "This is unrelated, but why did you reject Alfredo's proposal?" Aster could tell she was paying close attention. He smiled. "I recall when we first met, I slid, and my knees are way too precious." She blinked. What the hell does that even mean? Alfredo, listening nearby, furrowed his brow. Is that actually the reason?
Later, after obtaining the elixir, Aster sat in deep contemplation as he absorbed its energy. He was astonished by the immense increase in his mana, even though he had only absorbed 10% of it. He wondered if this incredible efficiency came from the transformation in his body, his mark of fire. Unlike the usual messy process of elixir absorption, this time there was no energy loss and no lingering impurities. It was so flawless it felt like the elixir had been designed specifically for him. His mind then shifted back to the academy offer. After long consideration, he realized his decision was already made. There were simply too many advantages, the biggest being that enrolling would help him find a sponsor. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking straight into a trap with a smile on his face. To clear his thoughts, he decided to go for a walk. But just as he was leaving, a young man with platinum hair appeared, waiting for him, and asked directly if he was Aster. Studying the man's features, Aster immediately guessed that the platinum hair marked him as part of Damien's family line, probably from a side branch. Tired of getting dragged deeper into this family drama, Aster denied any connection to the name. The young man looked shocked, as though someone had told him gravity was optional. The young man continued with his sarcasm, mocking Aster's dull, dark gray hair and claiming his uneasy gaze suited him perfectly. His smug remark was enough to make Aster's patience waver. Aster, however, kept his composure and replied calmly that hair color could vary a lot depending on lighting. Then, with the most innocent expression he could muster, an expression so faint it almost needed subtitles, he asked how his eyes could possibly be considered uncomfortable. The young man was caught off guard by this counter, hesitated, and then admitted that Aster's eyes did in fact look rather kind. He apologized for the misunderstanding and turned to leave. At that moment, Alfred, the head butler, rushed in dramatically, clutching Aster by the arm as though he had found a long-lost heirloom. Begging forgiveness for the misunderstanding, he confessed that he hadn't been able to sleep all night because he had failed to clarify the matter with Aster. Inwardly, Alfred fumed at the indignity of kneeling like this when he was, after all, the head butler. To him, this whole incident was nothing more than a bothersome misunderstanding. Yet here he was, humbling himself like an actor rehearsing a tragic opera. The platinum-haired youth, realizing the truth of the situation, turned back and shouted triumphantly that he had been right all along. He declared that the lifeless look in Aster's eyes, resembling that of a dead goblin, was unmistakable. Aster confirmed his identity without protest, as if announcing the weather. Enraged, the young man pointed at him, accusing him of lying and acting with shameless insolence. Muttering that he would kill him, was immediately silenced by Alfred's sharp glare, a glare so sharp it could have shaved stone. The young man backpedaled, retracting his threat, and declared that he would overlook it for now. Still, he demanded that Aster come to the magic hall later so he could correct his bad behavior. Aster agreed with a shrug, so nonchalant it felt like he was accepting an invitation to lunch rather than a duel. After storming off, muttering further threats, the young man left Alfred to ask Aster if something was wrong. Aster smiled and reassured him that nothing was, privately thinking the timing was perfect. He wasn't in the best mood anyway. He then addressed Alfred by his full title, head butler, and asked if he could meet with the lady of the palace. Soon after, Lady Bianca welcomed Aster into her office. She noted that he had requested a meeting very early in the morning and asked if he had already reached a decision regarding her proposal. With a confident smile, Aster confirmed that he had decided to enroll in the academy. Lady Bianca was surprised at how quickly he had come to a decision, but she was pleased nonetheless. She told him they should begin preparations at once, and advised him to make himself comfortable in the meantime. Aster thanked her for her hospitality and took his leave. Once Aster left, Alfred entered the office. When Lady Bianca asked about the boy, she happily informed him that Aster had accepted the offer. Alfred could barely contain his excitement. He exclaimed that such decisiveness was only natural for someone with that burning flame in his eyes which not long ago had been accused of resembling a dead goblin's. Swept up in enthusiasm, Alfred launched into his plan, explaining that the first semester would be covered by the family. However, he wondered out loud how Aster, a vagrant from the gray zone, could possibly afford the high tuition fees afterwards. With theatrical flair, Alfred predicted that Aster would grow desperate, longing to continue his studies. In that critical moment, a helping hand would appear, Alfred's own personal sponsorship, offered like a savior descending from the heavens. Lady Bianca interrupted his monologue with calm precision, pointing out that he was making too much noise. Alfred immediately apologized and excused himself, hurrying off to the kitchen since mealtime was approaching, his dreams of dramatic sponsorship speeches temporarily shelved. After Alfred left, Lady Bianca sat in thought. She understood the butler's overwhelming joy. After all, Alfred's personal offer to sponsor Aster had been rejected more times than a traveling salesman at dinner time. Now at last, he had found an opening. Still, she regarded the academy proposal as a naive plan. She realized that Alfred's confidence came from having once been lured in by the very same trick when the former head butler used a similar method on him. Inwardly, she pitied Alfred, calling him a poor soul for believing history wouldn't repeat itself. Meanwhile, Aster was making his way toward the magic hall, where in his mind that boy from the side branch awaited. Upon arrival, he was greeted by a hooded figure carrying a candle. The robed man asked him why he had come. Aster hesitated, suddenly realizing he didn't even know the young man's name. Fortunately, the hooded figure seemed to have been expecting him and simply welcomed him, gesturing for him to follow. He led him to a door, warning cryptically that he should watch his head before entering. Aster opened the door and immediately understood. A flurry of papers smacked him in the face, filling the air with dust. Squinting through the mess, he found himself standing before a platinum-haired young man who cheerfully shook his hand and introduced himself as Henji von Blanco. Henji then asked if Aster had come to see his younger brother. Aster was astonished. That rude boy he had faced earlier had actually gone crying for backup, calling his older brother. The sight of Henji triggered Aster's memory. Back in his days as a fixer, he had infiltrated numerous magical academies. He had come away with an amusing observation, the peculiar traits of research mages, or as he liked to call them, the pen pushers. Their most telling feature was thinning hair, caused by years of tugging at it while overthinking. Aster had even divided this baldness epidemic into 4 stages. Stage 1, denial, when they wore their hoods up at all times. Stage 2, acceptance, when the thinning hair was left exposed. Stage 3, complete surrender, when the head was shaved entirely. And Stage 4, desperation, when the mage began seeking impossible magic for hair regrowth, a feat that, to this day, no one has succeeded in doing. But Henji was different. He had thick, youthful hair and looked far too fresh to fit into Aster's little tragic classification chart. Henji began with a formal apology for his younger brother's behavior. He admitted the boy had gone too far and explained that he never imagined such rudeness would be directed toward a guest of the young head of the family. His manner was polite and smooth. While serving tea, Aster asked if Henji worked at a magic academy. Henji revealed that he was in fact the vice principal of one. This revelation impressed Aster. A prestigious family like the Blancos would never hand out such a position purely because of lineage, which meant Henji must be exceptionally capable. Henji went on to say that Aster was unlike the usual vagrants of the gray zone. Aster laughed in agreement, though inwardly he felt uneasy. If Henji had been hostile, the task at hand would have been simple, but the man's kind smile only made things worse. Aster recognized the negative human chemistry between them, the unspoken truth that some people were destined to never get along no matter how polite the conversation. Soon, Henji congratulated Aster on his invitation to enroll in Zenian Academy. Aster thanked him, though Henji kept insisting it was a rare opportunity, mentioning proudly that he himself was a graduate of the 145th class. Aster couldn't help wonder if Henji was suddenly trying to build a school fellowship bond, the kind of "we're both alumni" talk that came with awkward fraternity energy. Realizing his enthusiasm was showing, Henji quickly apologized, admitting that he had gotten carried away when he heard about Aster's enrollment. He said something unnecessary and then suggested that they get to the main point. Aster leaned back slightly, wondering what exactly this main point was going to be. Henji told Aster there was one thing he wanted to confirm first. Without hesitation, he asked a direct, shocking question. Would Aster be willing to risk his life for a friend? He explained that the fate of the entire Blanco family rested on this matter. Then, in a gesture so dramatic it could have been staged for theater, Henji presented a glowing book, promising that if Aster agreed, this tome would be his.
Aster froze in shock. He recognized it instantly, the Blanco family's core secret, the legendary tome of healing light. Meanwhile, in the palace garden filled with yellow flowers, Lady Bianca was tending to her blooms. She breathed a sigh of relief, comforted that Damien's enrollment in the academy, once her greatest headache, had been resolved without conflict. Her thoughts drifted toward Aster. She admitted to herself that his talent was impressive. As for his personality, she recalled Alfred's words, bold, even rude at times, but normal for someone his age. What she admired most was his steady composure and his refusal to flatter, even after learning Damien's background and status. In her eyes, his standing was different, higher somehow. But precisely for that reason, she believed he would never truly belong anywhere, like a free bird that refused to be caged. Still, she reminded herself that there were many ways to keep valuable people close. For Damien's sake, she would not let such a talent slip away. Back in the magic hall, Aster was still reeling from Henji's offer. He wondered about the man's true motive. Studying Henji's eyes, he found them so clear and transparent they revealed nothing at all. Usually, Aster believed feelings, good or evil, leaked faintly through the eyes. But Henji's gaze was unreadable, like a professional assassin who had worn his mask so long he no longer knew his own face. Henji warned him not to be hasty, insisting this was no light matter. Aster replied calmly that he would give his answer. To his own surprise, the unease he had felt earlier began to fade. Now that he understood Henji's nature, the situation seemed easier. They were both men from muddy waters, and there was no reason to feel uncomfortable. Aster told Henji that if he had something to ask, he would listen. If he thought he could do it, he would, and if not, he would decline. Henji bristled at his words, asking angrily if he would still listen even if his life were endangered just by hearing the request. He even threatened to kill him if he refused afterward. Aster stared back defiantly, telling him to go ahead and kill him, adding with dry sarcasm that a man couldn't die twice. Then, mid-sentence, he stopped, remembering awkwardly that he, personally, could in fact die a second time. A silence stretched. Then Henji released his aura, attempting to overwhelm him with sheer pressure. But Aster stood firm, unimpressed by the intimidation. Finally, Henji smiled, admitting he couldn't shake him and declaring that Aster had passed the test. With the test concluded, Henji said he would now speak plainly. He explained that he needed someone trustworthy, but that person could not be from the Blanco family. He confessed that at first his expectations were low. In his view, most vagrants from the black and white zone were alike, and Damien, being young, might lack sharp judgment about people. Yet what caught his attention was that Lady Bianca, known for her overwhelming devotion to Damien, still kept Aster close. That, Henji thought, meant there must be something different about him. By chance, the clash between his younger brother and Aster provided the perfect excuse to summon him. Aster asked Riley if it was really necessary for the vice principal of a magic academy to use his brother as an excuse. Henji admitted his suspicion was correct, explaining that the situation was delicate and he could not take the first step openly. He quickly dismissed the idea of a family power struggle, claiming the Blanco family was cohesive. Then he revealed the real reason. He was under surveillance by the Dekulin family. When Aster asked why, Henji chose honesty. He reassured Aster that he had no intention of killing him, then revealed the shocking truth. He was secretly researching the Dekulin family's celestial source technique, a secret known only within their lineage. It seemed they had discovered his activities. Henji added that he had managed to obtain the technique through an unexpected route. Aster pressed him further, asking how a man who was supposed to have died long ago was still alive. He remarked that if the Blanco family were investigating, their obvious aim would be to find a way to counter him. Henji shook his head, commenting that the Dekulin family was not rational. If he were only seeking a countermeasure, they would have still tried to kill him, vice principal or not. But it had gone further. At first, he had only sought weakness. Then he had discovered something else, something hidden in the celestial source technique itself, the very origin of all the Dekulin family secrets. He explained that he had discovered not just a weakness in the celestial source technique, but a way to improve and develop this perfect secret. And once he had seen that possibility, stopping was no longer an option. He said confidently that Aster, being someone interested in magic, would surely understand his feelings. Aster, however, was left stunned. In his head, he concluded that Henji wasn't just a little eccentric, but utterly, gloriously insane. Who in their right mind would conduct such reckless research in the heart of his own family's territory? Then, a chilling realization hit Aster. He connected Henji's confession with memories from his past life. The timing matched perfectly. The true reason the Dekulin family had secretly crushed the Blanco family was not politics or power struggles, it was Henji's insane research into enhancing the celestial source technique. Bone, the Dekulin patriarch, must have seen from the start the enormous potential of this enhanced version. That was the very secret behind Bone's overwhelming strength in their final battle. Noticing Aster's silence, Henji asked if he regretted listening, admitting that the sheer scale of the matter might be a little overwhelming. Aster ignored the question and instead demanded to know why Henji had specifically sought him out. Henji explained that he hadn't told his family anything about this research. He suspected the Dekulin family had planted a spy among them, but he couldn't pinpoint who. Aster quickly deduced that if the method by which Henji had obtained the technique was being traced, then the Dekulins probably leaked an incomplete version themselves as bait. Henji confirmed this with a dry laugh, admitting that once he realized they were tracking him, he deliberately released part of that incomplete formula back at them. Because, he added bluntly, I didn't want to die either. Aster raised his eyebrow and wondered aloud why Henji didn't simply defect to the Dekulin family. They'd probably welcome him with open arms, maybe even throw a parade. Henji replied vaguely that he had his own personal reasons, the sort one doesn't just share over tea. He then revealed his request. Since Aster wasn't tied to the Blanco family, he wanted him to do something quietly behind their backs. The research, Henji admitted, was supposed to be collaborative, but his progress had hit a dead end. He needed Aster to take his thesis to Professor Baron at Zenian Academy, promising that he would be rewarded handsomely. In return, he would hand over the spell of healing light. Aster saw the offer as priceless, but decided to push further. He suggested they raise the stakes. Henji should give him the spell of healing light now as collateral, and once the new celestial source technique was completed, he should also hand that over. That way, they'd be truly in the same boat. A glorious all-or-nothing partnership.
Henji called him audacious, but admitted the logic was sound. After all, Aster wasn't the type to accept a job with bad terms. After a moment's consideration, Henji agreed. He reasoned, since Aster didn't know the original technique, the new version wouldn't be useful to him yet. Anyway, but he promised to hand it over upon completion. Henji also set one condition of his own. Until the thesis was fully completed, he might need Aster's help again, and he expected support when the time came. Since they were rowing the same boat, it shouldn't be a big deal. Aster agreed at once, though he clarified that he'd only help if it concerned the thesis. Taking the papers, he joked that he couldn't read. Henji froze for a second, his face caught between disbelief and despair, until Aster admitted he was joking. Henji muttered under his breath that Aster was rude, boring, and probably a little suicidal. Then Aster asked about Professor Baron and whether he was trustworthy. Henji laughed and said he and Baron had competed for first and second place ever since their academy days, even when they became assistant professors. With a sigh, he explained that the rivalry had ended once he returned to the Blanco family. But of course, he had always been one step ahead. Aster thought to himself that the world really was a miserable place since it apparently contained two lunatics like Henji. Later, back in Aster's room, Damien was watching him pack items into his subspace pouch, grumbling that he wasn't supposed to get caught. Among the books, Aster noticed a letter sealed with red wax. He opened it and snorted at the opening words, "To my dear Aster." The letter was from Henji, explaining that the enclosed magical texts were essential for his future. At the bottom, Henji had even written out a detailed learning order so that Aster could develop the intellect worthy of his status. He signed it warmly as your friend, Henji von Blanco. Looking at the towering pile of books and the meticulous instructions, Aster admitted it was a wonderful gift. He marveled at Henji's genius in designing a progressive path from basic to advanced magic. But at the same time, he reminded himself that Henji was still a madman. With a wry smile, he muttered, "Not bad," and then sat down to write something. He began a list of sponsors for his future tower, placing Henji von Blanco's name right at the top. He counted the books, around 132, not even including the healing spell and the thesis. He mused that whether the spell of healing light should be made available to the public in his tower was a matter to discuss with Damien later. Remembering the sight of Damien happily hugging a cat and calling it his friend, Aster smiled. That, he thought, was the true privilege of friendship. His gaze returned to the mountain of books Henji had given him. They weren't just scattered volumes, they formed a complete foundation of magical knowledge. With this, anyone could build themselves up as a mage from scratch. His perspective shifted. Previously, he had only thought about hoarding books in his tower, but now he realized the books themselves would define it. The tower would not just be a monument of pride, but a place where knowledge could be bestowed on all who sought it. Meanwhile, Henji was reflecting on the meeting. He admitted to himself that Aster had been an unexpected gain. Originally, his plan was simple. If Aster proved useful, hand over the thesis. If not, quietly remove him from the picture. But after their encounter, Henji found him to be far more interesting. He recalled Aster's fearless response to his death threat, and he'd realized it hadn't just been bravado. Henji had noticed something unusual in Aster's eyes, true indifference toward death. To him, this set Aster apart from the other pigs, as he unkindly called them in his mind. Instead of finding it unsettling, he actually found it amusing. Aster was clearly hiding many secrets, and that only made things more entertaining. For the first time, Henji felt like he had found someone standing in the same place, staring in the same direction, and what was more, desiring the same results. It was a strange new feeling, and he wasn't sure if he liked it or loved it. For half a second, Henji wondered if Aster truly couldn't read. Then he dismissed the idea. No, impossible. Even Henji wasn't that unlucky. When it came time to leave for the academy, the maid informed Aster that he would need to fill out a few simple forms upon arrival.
She added that both young Master Damien and Aster were exempt from the entrance exams, meaning they were already official students. And she also remarked that the new uniform suited him well. Aster thanked her politely, and they set off. He mused that prestigious families always receive special admissions, but this deal wasn't bad for him either. At the carriage, Damien and Lady Bianca were waiting. Damien, practically bouncing with excitement, called for Aster to hurry. Before they left, Lady Bianca spoke gently to Aster, asking him to take care of himself. She expressed her hope that he would achieve what he truly wanted, reminding him this was a great opportunity. Aster smiled and thanked her. As the carriage rattled along, her words echoed in his mind, "What I want." He resolved silently that he would get it, whatever it took. He thought of Xenon, the greatest academy on the eastern continent, brimming with potential sponsors. His plan was simple. He would acquire every last one of them. With a confident grin, he imagined his new life and thought, "Just you wait, colleagues, here I come." During the journey, Aster buried himself in the stack of books Henji had given him. He had to admit, Henji was a remarkable magical researcher. He reflected that the principles of magic are simple, but their interpretations vary infinitely. Water, for example, some saw it as the source of life, others as a catastrophic flood. Everything depended on perspective. Each great family had built its magical tradition from a unique interpretation of the same underlying truths. By the time he finished reading, he had made an alarming discovery. Henji's carefully prepared curriculum was directly linked to the celestial principles of the Dakulin family. His thoughts were interrupted by Damien's enthusiastic shout, "My friend, look, we've arrived!" Outside the window loomed the towering structure of Zenyan Academy. Their escort explained that tradition, passed down from the first wise headmaster, required all students to enter the academy on foot on enrollment day, regardless of their status. She wished them wisdom and good fortune and then departed as soon as the boys began walking. Damien clutched Aster's arm, urging him to hurry. He explained nervously that Lancensy, the lady accompanying them, had warned that if they arrived late, they might not find any seats left. Aster rolled his eyes internally and checked their assigned seats, Class M3, seats 11 and 12. But Damien, still panicking, pointed at some empty chairs and asked if they could just sit there instead. Aster sighed to himself. Was this really the same boy who didn't even want to come to the academy in the first place, and now he's acting like a tourist on festival day? As Damien moved forward, he accidentally bumped into a large student with long gray hair, who turned with a scowl sharp enough to cut glass. He snapped at Damien, demanding to know what his problem was. Aster quickly helped Damien up and asked if he was okay. Damien, still cheerful even from the floor, assured him that he wasn't hurt at all. He apologized to the gray-haired student, admitting he hadn't been paying attention. They were about to walk away when the student stopped them with a cutting tone, glaring at his clothes. He asked Damien what had gotten on them. Aster answered casually for him, "Saliva."
From the man's aura, Aster recognized him as a noble and immediately predicted Damien's response. He would apologize profusely and probably try to clean the clothes himself. Sure enough, Damien began rubbing at the stains and promised to make them shine brighter than new, which only made the noble even angrier. Aster sighed. A fight was now inevitable. The large man lost his patience, threw a fist at Damien, and ordered him to get out of his sight. But before the blow could land, Aster grabbed his fist firmly. He'd told the young noble that he was making a mistake and suggested he stop right there. The student snarled and demanded to know who Aster was. Aster stood tall and replied clearly that he was Damien's friend. The noble smirked, mocking Aster for his loyalty, remarking that few people would take a beating for a friend, but he warned him that he would regret this day. Aster sighed inwardly. So much for making friends on the first day. Apparently, fists spoke louder than handshakes here. Cracking his knuckles, he decided to abandon diplomacy. The commotion drew a crowd of curious students. Someone whispered that the gray-haired student looked like he was from the Dolanvy family, though no one recognized Aster or Damien. The spectators began to speculate on the outcome, most favoring Dolanvy. After all, rumor had it their new student this year was supposed to be extraordinary. At that moment, a student who carried an air of authority pushed through the gathering crowd, scolding the onlookers for merely standing by while a fight was about to erupt. Someone timidly asked if they should intervene, but the authoritative student flatly refused. Instead, he instructed the others to clear the way and ordered a gray-haired mage to set up a magical barrier around the area. The scene quickly turned into a spectacle. Students began placing bets on the likely victor, with the majority cheering for Hexter, the well-known scion of the Dolenvi family. Aster, watching the growing chaos, allowed a faint smile to tug at his lips. Hexter stepped forward confidently, introducing himself as the second son of the proud Dolenvi family, and demanded to know Aster's name. Aster replied calmly, noting that unlike Hexter, he hailed from no great lineage, and that he should simply consider him a passerby. Hexter let out a sarcastic chuckle, saying that a lack of noble blood didn't matter, but that this tiny arena might be a handicap for a mage like him. In what he described as an act of generosity, he allowed Aster to make the first move. Aster found the entire situation utterly absurd. Mocking Hexter, he remarked that for someone who claimed to dislike talking, Hexter sure had a long tongue, and then asked, lightly, if he was scared. Hexter naturally was enraged by the insult, and lunged forward, beginning a fierce exchange. His first punch was powerful, but Aster observed that there were really two factors at play, not just Hexter's strength, but the chaotic interference around him. Hexter had been confident in his ability to withstand any mage's strike, yet he was immediately shocked when Aster's punch landed, wondering how a seemingly ordinary fist could pack such force. He muttered under his breath, calling Aster a scoundrel. Before Hexter could fully process the unexpected blow, a healing spell enveloped him. Damien, grinning wildly, had cast it, though he himself didn't understand why he was helping his friend's opponent. Aster quietly remarked that noble families were indeed operating on a completely different level. Using the distraction, Aster landed another precise punch, scolding Hexter for letting his focus wander. Hexter found himself in a surreal nightmare, one opponent striking him with precision while another simultaneously healed him, and Damien was laughing hysterically as he cast his spells. Hexter's heart pounded violently, and he silently cursed, wishing he could just pass out to escape the madness. "Am I scared?" he thought, though he didn't even know how to answer. The crowd erupted, yelling at Hexter to stand his ground, reminding him that he was the pride of the Dolenvi family, the star of the Eastern continent, and the hope of all martial artists. They demanded that he finish the fight quickly and not waste time prolonging it. Faced with this mounting pressure and humiliation, Hexter exploded in rage, screaming that a mere mage dared to look down on him. He threw a punch at Aster, who effortlessly dodged. Hexter gathered all his energy for his most powerful attack yet, launching it with a deafening explosion. The crowd cheered wildly, declaring that this was indeed the Hexter they knew. But when Hexter felt the strike connect, he was stunned. Why did it feel so light? In the next instant, he watched in disbelief as Aster flew through the air, landing skillfully on the ground. Calmly dusting himself off, he rose to his full height. Hexter's furious scream split the air as he charged again, fully intent on overwhelming Aster. But Aster remained collected, ready for whatever came next. Thinking over the situation, Aster noticed that Damien kept healing Hexter, which made him realize that ending the fight would require a single, decisive knockout blow. He decided to use a special technique he had developed with his comrades in his past life. This technique relied on drawing energy from the collision of mana particles. It was neither a martial art nor conventional magic, but a pure technique born from the very properties of mana itself. He called it the collision style. Unleashing the technique, Aster created a blinding flash of blue light that left the spectators awestruck. Dust thickened in the air, obscuring the battle's outcome, while the crowd stood frozen in eager anticipation. Moments later, Aster raised his hands and declared his victory, shouting, "Cheers!" He urged the spectators to raise their voices, and the hall erupted in successive waves of cheering, astonishment, and exhilaration at the intensity of the fight. Those who had bet on Aster celebrated their unexpected win. Damien ran toward him, shouting excitedly, "We did it!" Aster calmly replied, "Yes." Looking out at the jubilant crowd, Aster thought to himself that they should stop acting so naive. Meanwhile, a pair of nobles observing the scene whispered in disgust, remarking that it was extremely vulgar for a magic student to fight in such a manner. Suddenly, an angry man, clearly an academy official, pushed through the students, yelling for them to move aside. His voice boomed with fury as he demanded to know who had dared to start a fight on the first day of the entrance ceremony, and threatened to drag everyone away if they didn't disperse immediately. Aster, though aware he had caused a considerable scene, remained unbothered. After all, he had been a fixer for years and had many ways to escape. Besides, it was clear that everyone had enjoyed the spectacle. Before he could react further, Damien stepped forward, grabbing Aster by the arm, and loudly declared that they were the culprits. He pointed to himself and Aster to attract the official's attention. The angry official turned towards them, his glare sweeping the hall while Hepster lay unconscious on the floor behind them. Damien confirmed firmly, "Yes, sir, it was us."